Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was at an oversight committee hearing on the role of money in politics. Now, I'm going to show you this entire 4-minute clip because it is just masterful. But before I show it to you, I also want to tell you that there is a second clip that you have to stay around for, because this second clip, the information that I dug up about the guy in the second clip is just, you have to stay for it. So first of all, though, let me show you this incredible line of questioning from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the role of money in politics.
Thank you, Chair. So let's play a game. Let's play a lightning round game. I'm going to be the bad guy, which I'm sure half the room would agree with anyway. And I want to get away with as much bad things as possible, ideally to enrich myself and advance my interest, even if that means putting my interests ahead of the American people. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn. Oh, and by the way, I have enlisted all of you as my co-conspirators. So you're going to help me legally get away with all of this. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn, I want to run. If I want to run a campaign that is entirely funded by corporate political action committees, is there anything that legally prevents me from doing that?
No.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping me from being entirely funded by corporate PACs, say from the fossil fuel industry, the healthcare industry, big pharma. I'm entirely 100% lobbyist PAC funded. Okay, so let's say I'm a really, really bad guy, and let's say I have some skeletons in my closet that I need to cover up so that I can get elected. Mr. Smith, is it true that you wrote this article, this opinion piece for the Washington Post entitled, "These payments to women were unseemly, that doesn't mean they were illegal"?
Well, I can't see the piece, but I wrote a piece under that headline in the Post, so I assume that's right.
Okay, great. So, green light for hush money. I can do all sorts of terrible things. It's totally legal right now for me to pay people off. And that is considered speech. That money is considered speech. So I use my special interest dark money funded campaign to pay off folks that I need to pay off and get elected. So now I'm elected, now I'm in. I've got the power to draft, lobby, and shape the laws that govern the United States of America. Fabulous. Now, is there any hard limit that I have, perhaps Mrs. Hobart Flynn, is there any hard limit that I have in terms of what legislation I'm allowed to touch? Are there any limits on the laws that I can write or influence, especially if I'm based on the special interest funds that I accepted to finance my campaign and get me elected in the first place?
There's no limit.
So there's none. So I can be totally funded by oil and gas. I can be totally funded by Big Pharma, come in, write Big Pharma laws, and there's no limits to that whatsoever.
That's right.
Okay, so awesome. Now, Mr. Mirabani, the last thing I want to do is get rich with as little work possible. That's really what I'm trying to do as the bad guy, right? So is there anything preventing me from holding stocks, say, in an oil or gas company, and then writing laws to deregulate that industry and cause, that could potentially cause the stock value to soar and accrue a lot of money in that time?
You could do that.
So I could do that. I could do that now with the way our current laws are set up. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so my last question is, or one of my last questions, I guess I'd say, is it possible that any elements of this story apply to our current government and our current public servants right now?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have a system that is fundamentally broken. We have these influences existing in this body, which means that these influences are here in this committee shaping the questions that are being asked of you all right now. Would you say that that's correct,
Yes.
Mr. Mirabani or Mr. Schaub?
Yes.
All right, so one last thing, Mr. Schaub. In relation to congressional oversight that we have, the limits that are placed on me as a congresswoman, compared to the executive branch and compared to, say, the President of the United States, Would you say that Congress has the same sort of standard of accountability? Is there more teeth in that regulation in Congress on the president, or would you say it's about even, or more so on the federal?
In terms of laws that apply to the president, yeah, there's just almost no laws at all that apply to the president.
So I'm being held, and every person in this body is being held to a higher ethical standard than the president of the United States.
That's right, because there are some ethics committee rules that apply to you.
And it's already super legal, as we've seen, for me to be a pretty bad guy. So it's even easier for the president of the United States to be one, I would assume.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
All right. What can I possibly add here? This is why everybody in Washington is afraid of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is exposing the legal corruption in the system, how this whole process works, how these candidates are propped up by their big donors, and that enables both the big donors and the candidate to make lots and lots of money off the entire process. This is incredible. And it's just, I'm sort of speechless because usually I have some analysis or something, but she just broke it down completely. I have nothing really more to add here, except to say that she's also, I mean, in addition to being a congressperson, she is a leader and a teacher. And this is something that more politicians need to be. It's not just about representing people. It's about leadership. It's about doing what is right. And it's about educating people who may not be familiar with these issues. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing all of it. Now, let's get to the second video. So there is a clip here that follows directly this clip that I want to show you. So this is Bradley Smith, the former chairman of the Federal Elections Commission. Now, he's a Republican, but it goes even a little deeper than that. But first, I have to show you his response to what AOC just said.
Mr. Roy of Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Smith, I wondered if you might have any comments on the questioning by my colleague from New York. You seem to have a few notes you're writing down. Anything you want to say after that discussion?
Well, I would say there are a couple things, for example, that would not be. She answers, is there anything that could apply here? There are certain things that could not apply here. For example, the whole point of the article that she held up that I wrote was that you cannot use your campaign funds to make those kinds of payments. That would be illegal personal use. Right. Campaign funds are not dark money. They are totally disclosed, so they are not dark money. It's worth noting, by the way, that earlier it was mentioned that dark money constituted about $1.7 billion. I believe that figure is incorrect by a factor of about 500%. Dark money constitutes about 2 to 4% of the total spending in U.S. elections and has always been involved in U.S. elections. So those are just a couple of points. And I did kind of chuckle at the question, is it possible, asked of us, that these influences this money is influencing the questioning here? To that, I'd say that's something you have to ask yourselves if you're being influenced and see what you think. If you are, you might question yourselves. If you're not, you might question this hearing.
All right. There are a couple things I want to respond to here. First off, let's start small. So he says here that, quote, the whole point of the article that he wrote in the Washington Post is that you cannot use your campaign funds to make those sorts of payments. That would be illegal. But he's being purposely obtuse here. If you actually read his article, this is what he says. So here's the article. Those payments to women were unseemly. That doesn't mean they were illegal. He says here, yes, those payments were unseemly, but unseemliness doesn't make something illegal. At the very least, the law is murky about whether paying hush money to a mistress is a campaign expense, quote unquote, or personal expense. In such circumstances, we would not usually expect prosecutors to charge the individuals with a knowing and willful violation, leading to criminal charges and possible jail time. A civil fine would be the normal response. So, the whole article is designed around the idea that maybe these aren't illegal payments. That's the whole point of the article, is to raise doubt about it. Now, yes, technically, if you used a campaign donation to pay off a mistress, yes, that is illegal. But that isn't the question here. The question is, Even if you use your own money to do it during a campaign, is that illegal? And that's what he's raising doubt about in this piece. So Ocasio-Cortez was still completely correct because that's what Donald Trump did. Now, you have to prove that it was done in service of your campaign. But again, he's just getting caught up on some bullshit here. The whole point is that Donald Trump so far has gotten away with it. Now, let me move on a little bit here. So he also mentions how campaign funds are not dark money. They are totally disclosed. So again, he's getting caught on a ridiculous technicality here. Dark money was, yes, a phrase that Ocasio-Cortez used in her line of questioning, but the whole point was that all of these campaign donations and your actions, all of it is legal. It is legal. Now, yes, there is dark money, and then there is also just regular campaign donations or PAC donations. Yes, but the whole point, he's missing the entire point. The whole point is that you can be influenced, and politicians are influenced by the money they receive, whether it's dark or not, whether the donation is disclosed or it isn't. Regardless, that donation has historically proven to be a factor in how politicians form policy and how they write these bills and in what is focused on and what is passed in Washington. So the whole point of this discussion is to show you that all of this bribery is legal. That's the problem. It's not that, oh, this is technically legal or technically illegal. The whole point is that regardless of what is happening, the fact that these large corporations can give all this money to these candidates and then influence them in policy making, all of that is legal. And then that candidate can also then, as Ocasio-Cortez was describing, they can then have stocks in a company and help to deregulate that industry to benefit their shares. So again, all of this is legal, and that's the problem. But let's go a little bit deeper. Why is Bradley Smith pushing back on this? Who is Bradley Smith, apart from being a former FEC chairman? Let's go a little deeper. After leaving the FEC, Smith returned to teaching at Capital University and founded a nonprofit organization, the Center for Competitive Politics, to promote deregulation of campaign finance. In 2017, the center changed its name to the Institute for Free Speech. Okay, so this should sort of speak for itself, and I'm going to go even deeper. But just so he came out of the FEC, founded a nonprofit organization that promotes deregulating campaign finance. So who funds this organization? Let's go to sourcewatch.org. Between 2010 and 2015, IFS, then the Center for Competitive Politics, received over $4 million combined from Donors Trust and Donors Capital Fund. The twin donors organizations are advertised as a way for very wealthy people and corporations to remain hidden when funding sensitive or controversial issues, creating a lack of accountability. Li Fang, writer at the blog Think Progress, has claimed that center is a front group of libertarian activist Howie Rich, which the center has denied. The Center for Competitive Politics, along with groups such as the Cato Institute and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, worked in favor of the Supreme Court decision Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission. The groups filed amicus briefs to the court. So this group that Mr. Smith started after he left the FEC is funded by billionaires with the sole purpose of them promoting deregulation of campaign finance so that billionaires and corporations have even more influence in Washington. And Mr. Smith, Bradley Smith, has the audacity to say, quote, I chuckle at the questions that is it possible that money is influencing the questions? He is directly being influenced by money. And he's either, the funny thing is, I honestly don't think he's even aware of it. In his mind, the way these people operate is they self-justify. They justify all their actions. These people don't think they're bad. Like, that's what, I mean, there are the occasional people out there, like I think Roger Stone does think that he is sort of like a cartoon villain. But everybody else, I mean, people like this, like Bradley Smith, I don't think he thinks he's a bad person because he's operating within the law. So his whole point, his whole morality is based on what does the law say. So if it's legal, then it's okay. He has no moral center. He doesn't actually care if corporations and millionaires have a lot more influence on politics than the average person does. He doesn't give a shit because it's legal. All of it is legal. So for him, when he's talking about, I chuckle at the questions if money is influencing them, he doesn't even realize that he is being influenced by the money. And that's half the problem. A lot of these politicians don't realize how much influence that money has because it happens without them even realizing it. It's the company you keep. It's your environment. If you're in an environment where you are surrounded by extremely wealthy people and executives at corporations, they are going to have an influence on you whether you want them to or not. Simply by the company you keep, you will be more empathetic to whatever their positions, whatever their needs are. That's how humans operate. That's how we work. If we meet somebody, we relate to them more than if we criticize somebody we've never met. So this is this part, in addition, of course, to how AOC broke the whole system down. I mean, this is a masterclass in showing you in how broken American politics is, how this whole system is broken, how it's all dependent on money, how there is no morality in this whatsoever. It's all about, can we change the laws? Because if we can change the laws, well, then it's okay for us to do because it's legal and they don't feel bad about it. That's the problem. These billionaires, these corporations, people like Mr. Smith have so much influence on the system and they don't give a shit because to them, all of it is still legal.